I guess the word this morning that we ought to think about is hyperbole. How does someone overstate something in order to get our attention in such a way that it sort of startles us and causes us to open our eyes more widely so that we can begin to understand what it is they're talking about? Hyperbole is a way of saying something so outrageous that it draws us back to what the real purpose of that particular word or sentence is all about. This morning, when we read from the Gospel of Luke, Jesus is speaking in a hyperbolic way. That is, he wants those crowds that have been following him to know that this is not just a lark. This is not just a fun, fine time as they wander with him wherever he happens to be. Sure, he's inviting. They haven't heard the kinds of things about which he has been talking, so they come out from the villages in groups to hear what this latest word from God is going to be about. But in every case, Jesus is invitational. It isn't just telling them something new that they've not heard before. It's really inviting them to start on a new journey, a different journey, to follow a different path than what they have been following in the past. And so as he shares these words in the Gospel of Luke, it's a wake-up call. Don't just come out here because I'm entertaining or because I'm interesting or because someone in the family said, "Have you heard Jesus lately?" What he's talking about? No, he wants them to understand that he has a purpose not just for his life, but for their lives as well. And so he makes it patently clear that if you want to be a disciple, you have to put first things first. Well, I got to thinking about how that may have been illustrated to us in the last few weeks, and I began to look at the Olympics. You realize that there has to be a lot of preparation before you enter into a contest like the Olympics. And you have to be focused. You can't be half-hearted about it because you are in major competition with other folks who have great gifts and skills as well. In particular, I thought about one of the 100-meter dash heats before the finals came up and how they were all in the blocks ready to listen to the starter say, "It's time to run." And one of those in that heat actually leaped out before the starter said it. You don't get a second chance in the Olympics. He was disqualified immediately, and it was over for him. But I also began to think about what it takes if you're going to be competing at that level with other folks who have honed themselves and prepared so intensely. Sometimes there are other things that happen that detour us from the competition. For example, suppose that you pull a muscle in the middle of a race. You don't finish. One of the greatest scenes of one of the distance races that was shown to us was when a young lady tripped and fell, and one of the other competitors stopped and helped her up, and together they finished the race. You know, Hebrews wanted to make it clear to us that you don't just start a race and stop in the middle of it unless you don't understand what the goal is. And the goal isn't just a finish line in terms of a race. It's the completion of something for which you have given your whole self. The training that goes into competition, the intensity of the moment, all of those things seem to just culminate in such a short period of time for persons who are engaged in these kinds of competitions. The sadness, of course, and you all know this, is Ryan Lochte, who, with some of his friends, after the swimming competition had been completed, decided they would party. And they got drunk, and they misbehaved. But worse than that, he told an untruth about it. You see, the Olympics is more than just about crossing the finish line. In terms of how we participate with the rest of the world, it's an expression of character. It's an expression of quality, who we are deep down inside as a people. I think that Jesus was trying to convey that kind of message to the crowd that gathered to hear what he had to say. If you don't have the perseverance, if you don't have the character, don't take the first step. In another scripture it says, no one puts their hand to the plow and then looks back, because we all know what happens. We make a mess out of the field. So Jesus is trying to say to those people who gathered, and to us as well, that if you are going to begin the journey, don't take it lightly. Because it not only weakens the faith, but it also deteriorates the self. You know, when somebody gives their word for something and then breaks it, it's not just the other person that's hurt when you break that word. It does something inwardly to us as well. We feel diminished. We feel less than. We feel like we have not just appointed another, but we have somehow diminished ourselves. Most of us would say we believe in Jesus Christ. You know, it's an amazing thing to me how the world responds to the question of faith. Well, I believe in God. Yeah, I believe in God. Then what does it mean for the way you're living? Belief is a word that has with it a sense of commitment and purpose and intensity. It's not just a fad or a fleeting moment. It has to do with how we are and whose we are. And so when Jesus is talking to this crowd, he's reminding us that we're somehow expected to put action into our word. You know, years ago, I was the pastor of a church, and a couple who had been longtime members of that church came to me. And I just assumed they understood what discipleship was all about and what it meant to be a part of the body of Christ. And they came to me and said, we have a granddaughter who needs a letter of recommendation. Now, they said, we'd like you to write one for her. I said, I don't know your granddaughter. I've never met your granddaughter. How could I possibly write a letter of recommendation for your granddaughter? I can't do that. Their response was, if you don't do this, we will quit giving to the church. What does this have to do with discipleship and integrity of character and purpose? You see how simple it is sometimes to forget that we've begun the journey, and then something gets in the way, and we forget that we have made this commitment and that we are on a journey with brothers and sisters in Jesus Christ for a purpose. I didn't write the letter. They didn't stop giving. But what is it in our minds that somehow thinks that it's all about me? It's not about my faith journey. It's not about my commitment to Jesus Christ. And we sometimes turn that over so quickly and so simply that it startles us when that happens. You know, I had a friend who's a pastor, and he tried to handle that situation a little differently. Somebody said to him that they wanted a letter of recommendation. So he said he would write it. But the way he wrote it was this: I know so-and-so, I can't say enough good about them. Think about that for a moment. I can't say enough good about them. It was a letter of recommendation. And so that was the way he decided to handle it. But friends, when we look at what Jesus is saying to the crowds, can it be a wake-up call for us? We live in a very troubled world. We live in a world that needs discipleship. It needs folks who are making a commitment and who are prepared to live that commitment in spite of the discomfort and sometimes the challenges that are in front of us. Where do we find the strength of character to do that? Jesus was saying, if you come to follow me, this is what is required. Well, where are we? How many times have we been confronted with this word that should cause us to open our eyes and open our ears and understand how significant this is for our personal journeys? If Jesus Christ is Lord, then sometimes it will take us through situations that are uncomfortable. It will take us into situations that are challenging and sometimes even troubling. Are we prepared for that? I thought about that because Jesus didn't just simply say, you have to forsake everything else. What he was trying to say was, what's your priority? What's first in your life? If you don't have that placed where it belongs, then it diminishes everything else. I don't believe Jesus ever meant that you should hate your mother and your father and your brothers and your sisters. I don't believe that for a minute. But I think what he was trying to say to us is, if you're going to follow me, you have to put me first, because that determines every other facet of life. Don't treat that casually. Don't just follow me because you want to hear somebody be critical of the Pharisees or say some kind words about love one another, because that's not where it's at. It's about when we have difficult times, being sure that our focus is where it needs to be. You know, those athletes that competed in the Olympics, how focused they were, how intentional they were, because they wanted to hit that finish line, and they wanted to do it in record time. Friends, there is a finish line for us as well. And you know what it is. Jesus has promised us, if we are faithful to the gospel and to Jesus Christ, there is a finish line for us. Will we give it our all? Is it that important to us? Or is it just a cultural phenomenon? You know, I remember in the 50s, people thought it was really neat to belong to the church, and everybody was there. And then life began to change. And what happens? When people say, I believe in God, and then have no substance to put behind that belief. We are on a journey that requires our best. And even though we're human, and even though we fall short, we should never use that as an excuse for not understanding what Jesus said. If you're going to be my disciple, you have to be putting me at the top of the list. Everything else will fall into place, but you have to put me at the top. Just as simple as that. But to say it in the way he said it was designed to open our eyes, to startle us enough to realize that being a disciple is demanding as well as rewarding. And so as we look to the gospel reading this morning, as we think about Jeremiah, who had to say a word of judgment to God's people because they had not put God first. They had simply incorporated other gods and other religions and other patterns of life into their existence. And in doing so, had not only diminished their relationship with the God who brought them out of slavery into the promised land, but they diminished themselves as well. That's what happens when we don't follow through on our discipleship with Jesus Christ. Let's continue to be faithful to Jesus Christ as Lord. Amen.